Okay, in this session we're going to learn about the entity relationship model. Okay, entity relationship model. We talked about data models, right? Where we realized that a data model is a set of conceptual tools that helps me to define the schema. It helps me to specify the schema in such a way that a layman can understand it. So entity relationship is a type of a data model. Okay. So let's see how does an entity relationship model maps a real world into the database. Let's first understand what an entity is. An entity is any real world object or thing, any real world thing that can be distinguished from other things. Okay, so there should be some mechanism through which you can identify that thing that can be distinguished. So let's see some examples of an entity. A person, okay, say Alex, that's an entity. A cat, say Tom, that's an entity. Okay, a car, say Toyota Prius, that's an entity. So anything can be an entity if it can be distinguished. Okay, an entity has an entity type. An entity type is basically a specification of that entity. It determines what are the characteristics of that entity. Okay. The other thing that we have to understand here is an entity has different characteristics, right? And these characteristics are called the attributes of the entity. Attributes are characteristics. Okay. So let's say we're talking about a person entity. So person would have some characteristics, right? He would have a name. He would have a date of birth. He would have an address. He would probably have a phone number. He would probably have a profession. Okay. So these are the characteristics of person. In entity relationship model, we call them the attributes. So let's see how we represent an entity and its attributes on an entity relationship model. An entity is represented as an oval. Okay. Oops, my bad. Entity is represented by a rectangle, not an oval. Okay. So this is the representation of an entity, and we write the name of the entity inside it. So if I have to represent persons, the set of all the persons, I'll write it like this in an entity relationship diagram. Okay. Let's introduce a new term here. We talked about what entity type is, right? Did we do that? Yeah, we talked about entity has an entity type, which is the specification of that entity. Let's talk about entity set. Entity set is the collection of all entities having same entity type, right? Same entity type. So that would probably mean, if we are talking about the entity type person, then the entity set of person would be the set of all the persons that have a name, a date of birth, an address, a phone number, and a profession. Okay? You can think of it like this. Entity type is a class, and entity set is all the objects that have been created of this class. Okay, so we were talking about the representation of entity. So this is the representation of entity. Now let's look at how do we represent attributes. An attribute is represented via oval, okay? So when I say name is an attribute, I can represent it like this. When I say phone number is an attribute, I can represent it like this. So we talked about that an entity has attributes. So how do we relate these attributes to the entity? That can be done by connecting the attribute to the entity. So we represent this entity like this. We have a name, we have a phone number, we have an address, we have a profession, and what else do we have? We have a date of birth. So in this way I can represent the attributes of an entity. Okay,